To me, it appears that the Sumerian civilization appeared rather suddenly and abruptly. The second graduate paper I ever did was to ask the question, where did the Sumerians come from? To this day, we still don't quite know. My own take is they came from some nearby mountains, either the Zagros Mountains to the east or the Ararat Mountains to the north. But they came down, settled in that region, and again, why? It was not the best place to settle. But the area is called the Fertile Crescent. Fertile Crescent, and it's called that because it's crescent shape. It involves Mesopotamia and then reaches over and gets the land that is today Syria and what is today Israel. So it is somewhat crescent shaped. And it's a fertile land in the midst of big desert. I mean, if you're talking about the 3,000-mile Sahara Desert borders it, and then the Arabian Desert, and then on the east of that, the Zagros Mountains, which are generally bad lands. Afghanistan, generally a harsh land. But in the middle of all that, there is an area where the crops will grow a little bit, and where there are some rivers, and in some cases there's some rainfall. This area is called the Fertile Crescent, and your book does have a picture of the Fertile Crescent again on page 10. Here between the Mediterranean Sea and the Persian Gulf. It's 10 in my book. Now, it might be a different page in your book. All right. Now, leaving the somewhat far out stuff for a bit and going to standard history. Again, I've been asked, are you going to ask standard history on the test? Likely, but I'm also going to ask some own stuff, at least on chapter 1. I'm taking more liberties in chapter 1 because, again, it's a chapter of origins, and the origin of humankind is extremely controversial at best. According to what scholars generally recognize as being true, humans evolved from non-human ancestors. When Darwin first put this theory, he called them monkeys. Then they became the great apes. When I was in college, they believed that our ancestor was the gorilla. Then it became the chimpanzee. And more recently, DNA studies have led some paleontologists to believe that the original ancestor was the lemur, which is considered more primitive than the other primates. Each of you can believe what you want to. But eventually, they evolve into human form. The only human forms I want you to learn are the Neanderthal. Now, sometimes this word is spelled Neanderthal, T-H-A-L, and Cro-Magnon. The Neanderthal man and the Cro-Magnon man. Now, of all these, the Cro-Magnon man now is known to be fully human. Several years ago, I did a study of my own DNA. I sent to National Geographic a sample of my DNA that I got from inside my cheek, and they said that I was of an R1b haplogroup. The Cro-Magnon man is also R1b. I mean, modern humans are known to be descended from the Cro-Magnon man. Now, the big controversy is the Neanderthal man a cousin, or is he an ancestor? At one point, they said that but the Neanderthal man could not speak, as if they could determine that from his skeleton. Other people contradicted that. A big question is did modern man interbreed with the Neanderthal man? And folk, whether or not you believe he did will depend on what you read and when you read it. The issue on that changes. Personally, I mean, I've read where the graves of Neanderthal men and modern men and women are set in the same graves. We know that the Neanderthal man buried his dead, and he buried his dead oftentimes with flowers, indicating that he had religion. And also I read that each of us carry a little bit of Neanderthal genes in our DNA, and if we tried hard enough by mixing the right people, we could reconstruct a Neanderthal person But we're mixing someone who has the most Neanderthal genes with a member of the opposite sex who also has a lot of Neanderthal genes, and keep interbreeding that way until we would revive the Neanderthal, the extinct Neanderthal species. But again, that's controversial. Now, one thing I want to make a point about both of these men, or women. The average height of them was 6 feet tall, which is taller than the average height of modern humans. Their frame indicates they were muscular. Basically, a lot of them probably could have made a modern-day big league football team. They had bigger brain capacity than modern humans. Now, the size of the brain does not necessarily mean intelligence, but it indicates that these people may have been better. And in fact, the zoology book I still have from 1967 actually goes so far as to ask the question, is modern man degenerate? In other words, did they evolve higher than we, and modern man have gone downhill their level of evolution? Again, I want to point out, it looks almost like all modern day life of every species is degenerate from life that was once bigger and stronger than modern life. I mean, at the University of Georgia, they have what you might think of at first as a dinosaur. No, it's just a sloth that lived here in Georgia that's bigger than an elephant. The bison that once lived in North America, they have bones of bisons that are bigger than today's modern elephants. That modern life is degenerated from life that once was bigger and better than life today. Now, folks, again, if you question this, say, just look it up. My wife ran into a student of mine from another college. I mean, she was shopping, and all of a sudden this person learned that my wife's name was Cunningham, and he started talking to her and she found out that, of course, she was my wife. He said, we didn't believe everything he said at first. We started looking it up and found out that a lot of what he said was, in fact, true. Look it up. Anyway, then the Cro-Magnon man, he was slightly different from modern man. There's not much difference. Then he, of course, gave rise to modern man, which might be degenerate from the people we're talking about there. Now, at first it is believed that early man was primitive. He lived by a bunch of hunting and food gathering, going out and picking berries where we could find them, trying to tell the difference between a mushroom and a toadstool, learning what roots could be eaten and what roots couldn't. And he eventually decided, hey, I can plant this stuff and have an easier time than I can just going out and gathering it. Besides, the stuff I plant will grow better if I cultivate it. So he began cultivating his own food. Then he captured a few sheep and goats and began to domesticate animals. And according to old history, all this took a long time. And this led to what's called the Neolithic Revolution. Now, Paleolithic, that means Old Stone Age, where that people used primitive stone tools. Neolithic, New Stone Age. And the New Stone Age eventually gave rise to the Iron Age, then to the Copper Age, and finally to the Bronze Age. Bronze being a mixture, I believe, of copper and brass. That as mankind got better and better and learned more and more, he developed better and better tools, and eventually rose up by his own bootstraps. Now there is another alternate theory. Now I have to say, I mean, I've been talking about evolution. I do not subscribe to it. If you want me to tell you why, I could spend several minutes talking about it, and I have with some other panel. I still might. There are problems with it, particularly when it comes to human DNA. Even 35 and 40 years ago when I was in college, we did not know the role that DNA played in heredity. Modern studies in DNA almost make Darwinian evolution, as Darwin taught it, almost impossible. Now, DNA, I told you how that I spent $100 to send it to National Geographic. Now let me tell you, National Geographic is not a Christian organization. They're as pro-evolution as they come. But they were doing a study of human DNA. Here you find various ways, and regrettably I got this paper wet one time. I left my carbon down. The only time I've ever done that. But turnover, their purpose was to try to trace human migration patterns. In 1986, when people studying DNA came to a most interesting discovery. You might say two interesting discoveries. They learned that every modern human female alive today is descended from one woman. Have any of you heard this from an outside source? No. It's a study of the female mitochondrial DNA is spread from mother to daughter. Now there are a few exceptions. Sometimes the man will, but mostly it's spread from mother to daughter. Then there's mtDNA or male DNA that's spread from father to son. The study of male DNA came to the conclusion that all human males are also descended, all mothers from one man. Now, please don't anyone say Lucy, but does anyone have any idea what they call the woman?
Is it Adam and Eve?
They call the woman Eve. They call the man Adam. Excellent. Those names, for those of you who don't know, come from a book that is not allowed to be used in today's public schools. I'll call them forbidden books. And I'm not talking about Marxist Das Kapital, and I'm not talking about the origins. Those books are allowed. Because they'll broaden your mind, you know, it's called academic freedom. But there is a certain book that is not allowed.
The Bible is allowed. You can read it anywhere.
Students can read it.
Not there.
Teachers cannot.
Yeah.
Teachers cannot read it to students. Now in college, we have a little bit more freedom. In public schools, we do not have, teachers are not allowed to read it. This is a conduct, yes?
You said they found a common descendant. Did you know about how long ago it happened?
Okay, now, I mean, the year was 1986.
But
Now,
I mean,
as
is
to
it like-
when Eve lived. All right, now and according to this, Eve lived some 240,000 years ago. Now, here's how they come with that figure. They're assuming that the human